All right, good afternoon, or it's morning. It's going to be a long day. It'll be afternoon soon. But welcome this morning to the second day here in the Marine Corps Theater. Although we have the great Coast Guard here today for a presentation, but I want to welcome you to this. My name is Mike Black. I am the Vice President for Defense for AFCEA, and today we are honored to have representatives from the Coast Guard here today to talk about accelerating tomorrow's Coast Guard and harnessing the power of the cloud, the data, and next generation networks. So we're going to get into some cyber, IT, network type discussions. A couple of great leaders here from the Coast Guard. And actually, I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but I welcome you guys here to participate with us. And so we'll just start with Brian and go down the road.
Thank you, Mike, and I'm glad to be here at West 2023. My name is Captain Brian Erickson. I'm the Coast Guard's first Chief Data Officer and the Chief of the new Office of Data and Analytics.
Hi, I'm Patrick Thompson, Captain from the U.S. Coast Guard C5I Service Center. I oversee all the infrastructure, the networks, our movement to the cloud, our data centers, et cetera.
I'm Commander Jonathan White, and I'm the Cloud and Data Branch Chief. I'm leading our charge into our new cloud environments, mobilizing our capability, and building out our data infrastructure for Captain Erickson.
So hopefully this is filled with a bunch of nerds, because that's what we're going to talk about.
So I guess I'll start off. We're going to kind of go through the slides fairly quickly. We are looking forward to a lot of questions from the audience, so thank you all for attending. And I'll just kind of I'll give a little bit of a vision of kind of where we're going and a little bit of the why from the infrastructure side of the house. I think the Coast Guard has recently really started to understand the value that IT and everything that we do in the service center can really provide to Coast Guard operations. There's three critical areas that we're really focused on at this point. One of them is our networks, our computer networks, and modernizing them to provide our users all the way to the end point the best service that we can possibly provide that industry has available, and trying to get there a little bit faster than we have in the past. We've been really focused on making sure we have fiber all the way through our WAN, all the way to our end units. That has been successful over the last few years. We've improved our wireless connectivity, providing end users cell phones and mobility services to them. That has been a huge improvement. Our main focus upcoming in the future is getting to improve our satellite connectivity. Our shipboard platforms, our aircraft, they've had less than what is the industry standard today, and we really are looking forward to modernizing those in the near future. So that's really what we're looking for on the satellite front. The next foray is into 5G wireless. We have a few opportunities that we're looking at exploring. One of them is our shore ties. When our ships pull into port, our ships really can't get the connectivity that they need. If you look at our new generation ships, they're floating data centers. They have 80 racks of gear on them. They can't get by with a small copper shore tie like they have in the past. So we've been looking at exploring 5G connectivity to replace that and provide them with much more resilient, much faster data rates than they currently do today. And then we also have been looking at how do we provide, once people are on the ship, is there a future with our users as they move about the ship, as they deploy onto a small boat? Can we provide them with a data connectivity so that they can do their missions, biometrics at sea, other things like that in a better way? So those are the new areas that we're kind of exploring on the connectivity front. The next one would be our movement from a predominantly on-prem hosted solution for our data warehouses out to more of leveraging the cloud and what it has to provide. We're excited about that. We think that getting to the cloud is really a foundation of what Captain Erickson is going to be working on, which is really doing data analytics and data governance in a much more modern way than we do today. And I think that that is really a huge value proposition for how the Coast Guard does our missions. If we're able to actually leverage all the data we have today and answer questions faster, make better decisions, that's really the future. And we think that the way to get there is to improve and leverage the cloud opportunities that industry has, and that'll allow us to get there faster. Right now, when we're making changes to our on-prem environment, it just takes too long. I think that leveraging cloud will get us there faster, and it'll provide with better solutions than we could do on-prem, and we're really excited about digging into that domain. So with that, I think we could probably go on to the next slide, which we talk a little bit about how we want to get there and what we're looking at doing.
So we did a look across our entire enterprise, and we realized that we could bucket these problems onto the streams on the left. So we have a ton of legacy apps. We have approximately 90 apps that power the Coast Guard, and about 50 disparate cloud apps that are out there that have been purchased over time. So we want to bring those in and understand how can we modernize those apps in a rapid way. We have limited and siloed data services. We have a ton of databases out there. They don't share information with each other, or we put information into a singular data warehouse that's very rigid and hard to work with. We also mentioned the disparate cloud environments. Captain Thompson talked about our inadequate connectivity and also our limited processing. So a lot of our legacy assets, they were not built as a floating data center. They've been modeled over time, and we put compute capacity on there, but every system basically brings its own compute systems on board, and they all have their own recap schedules. And it's very inefficient and hard to keep pace with modernization when you have to work across those different siloed systems. So putting a common compute platform and storage platform on board our legacy assets while we bring our new assets online is a key focus for this. So over the next 5 years, we're going to focus investments in our infrastructure to build that foundation, to really drive capability in the field, to drive capability in our regional edges and in our headquarters as well. So on the right-hand side is kind of that's the symbiosis of all that work. We're going to be going from the bottom there. We want to leverage our software factory to build out rapid application modernization. Do a hybrid multi-cloud platform. We're acknowledging that we will have a data center, we will retain a data center, and we will also work in multiple cloud environments right from the get-go. So we're building out those connections in order to share data and share experiences in a seamless way. We want to have resilient and flexible networking that will enable our near real-time operational analytics and also our Coast Guard data fabric. So the data fabric is our modern view of how we want to take our existing data, make it move, make it alive, make it accessible, do it with zero trust principles, and then also make it available to our data analytics professionals who can then transform that information into valuable insights. And the key principle here is that we have to do all of this at the same time. So the Coast Guard has not necessarily made the critical investments over time to build this foundation, and we're attacking this as an everything problem. Everything needs to be solved, and we're looking for cohesive solutions that work with each other. We're not looking for a single solution. This is going to be a combination of 10, 50, 100 solutions that should all cooperate with each other through open standard interfaces and allow us to be flexible as far as deployment and scalability. The Coast Guard doesn't have a one-size-fits-all platform. We operate from a 150-foot patrol boat all the way up to the National Security Cutter, which is 350 feet. Sorry, I don't know. It's big. 420 feet. There it is. But there's a lot of room on that cutter versus the 150-foot cutter. So we have to be able to scale to that and also meet mission need where it's needed.
Yeah, and I would add also, the organization is very multi-mission and with a lot of kind of lines of business. And one data-intensive tech stack isn't going to be sufficient for the organization, from my view, moving forward. So, like John said, there's going to be a number of tech capabilities that we need. Some we are putting in place now, but there are still opportunities to partner with industry out there to bring this data fabric to a friction-free environment so that producers all the way up through the data lifecycle to the consumption, for the analysts or the end user, have an area where they can get the insights that they need at the speed that they need at the scale across the organization.
So I'll dig a little deeper into our resilient, flexible networking and what we're trying to go from and where we are and where we're trying to go to. The Coast Guard's a little unique in how we're organized from a networking point of view. Organizationally, we probably have 1,800 different physical locations that we're providing network connectivity to across the globe. Some of those offices only have 5 people working at them. Some of them have several hundred. If you look at, to try to compare us to a DoD base, the entire Coast Guard as a whole is probably one DoD base, right? There's 55,000 people working, across the globe, but spread out to a lot of small different spots. And why that's important is you have to think about, the solutions that potentially you provide to a large DoD entity may just not fully apply to us. You got to think of new and interesting ways of doing it. And in some cases, right now, we're spending money in ways that maybe we don't need to. I'll just give you an example. If we're of a marine safety office that has a dozen people at it, they go off and they do inspections on ships on a regular basis, right? And so the office may be empty every day. Should we be spending so much money to provide a dedicated, Coast Guard data connection to that location, or potentially just provide them with a commercial internet solution and use modern technologies to VPN in or get access to that data via a different way? If you look at opportunities like that are significant cost savings, then you can reinvest that money in other opportunities, which is looking at user experience, data analytics. How can we actually modernize by making different financial shifts? And that's an easy one to understand, but I just start off with that one. The next thing is just our users are increasingly mobile. You're not going to find a lot of Coast Guard people who are staying in one spot. Mobile solutions, an iPad, I have here, or just any old type of laptop or mobile device. Those are the tools that we really need, and we need to have connectivity wherever we go. If you picture that boarding officer or that inspector that's going off and doing a Coast Guard inspection, they're grabbing a mobile device, or in many cases today, they go into the office, they print out all the forms they need, they print out all their reference manuals, they're driving off into, go do an inspection, filling out those things, going back to the office, typing in that data into their system, and then going home. We're really looking at how do we fully look at that workflow and putting that on a mobile device, providing that user with connectivity no matter where they are for whatever they do. And they may not even need the office anymore, right? They just go straight to where they're doing the inspections. They look at the bridges, they look at the ships, they look at the ports and waterways, and they fill out all the forms, they do everything they need. They can host their meetings remotely and head back. That greater efficiency frees up their time and one of our biggest resources to be able to do things that are more important, and that's really the direction we're going. And to do that requires better data connectivity, requires cloud solutions, it provides different hardware and form factors than we currently have today. And that's really one of the areas where we're probably most excited about. As I mentioned earlier, wireless shore tie for cutters is a big deal. We're currently exploring different ways of providing that. One of them is just going to industry and having industry just provide that solution straight up. Another one is us actually building and designing and engineering a solution, installing it ourselves and maintaining it. There's a lot of trade-offs in doing that, and it's one of the areas we're looking in. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that we provide these new ships that we have that are an extreme amount of data and servers on board with the connectivity they need to be able to be secure and resilient and do their mission every day. Next one I'm going to talk about is low Earth orbit satellite. This to me is probably one of the most exciting areas that the Coast Guard is going to have over the next decade. And I think that across the board, even for maybe even home users, will be using this more. If you're not familiar with it, you definitely need to dig in and see the value proposition. For us, the biggest problem we have today is our latency off of our ships when we're trying to get our connectivity and our data. So in often cases, the users can't even use a web page because the latency is so bad that the web page will time out by the time they use it. These low Earth orbit satellites, the latency is almost faster than I have at my house, which is pretty amazing. And the bandwidth is substantial. It'll definitely serve all the purposes we have, at least for the next few years. And what that does is it allows us to continue to develop with these apps, continue to develop all these data analytics platforms, and provide that data to the end user in real time and allow them to do their mission at speed. And that's really where we need to get to, and we need to get there fast. I know we've released an RFI recently on that, and definitely if anyone wants to find me during the event, I'm looking forward to hearing about any new things that industry has to offer on that front. Commercial Wi-Fi at our shore sites. We've picked about 5 units across the Coast Guard, our training centers and some of our logistics centers, and we've installed hundreds of Wi-Fi access points with commercial internet at them. It's a Wi-Fi as a service vehicle that we leverage through industry, and it was kind of our prototype to see how this solution would do, how the users would use it, right? And it was interesting because what we're finding is that you end up with pods of users who will gather on a table somewhere in a conference room, in a cafeteria, and just in a corner. They find a couch and they work together in a different work environment, and they're able to get on their laptops and do everything and work together collaboratively in a different way. And there's a huge efficiency with that. We've seen it with just regular work. We've seen it with training. That solution is we're looking at how we can provide that across the board. How can we provide that kind of a wireless as a service solution at every unit in the Coast Guard as we move forward, and to find out new and interesting ways that adds value. We have one way. We have a logistics group that is they have these handheld devices, and they want to go out and they want to scan barcodes. They want to make sure that the logistics chain is managed quicker and more efficiently, and they're finding huge value in just having commercial grade Wi-Fi as a service, blanketed across every building on their bases. So we're looking at expanding that more, and if anyone has any ideas on that, I welcome that as well.
Okay, so with a robust network in place, how do we actually deliver capability to the end users? Well, right now we're in a position where we have legacy applications that just cannot be serviced anymore. We're in a place where we need to consolidate, replace, rebuild, rehome, whatever. We need to get on with our solution space. And what we're building out right now, today, is a hybrid multi-cloud platform that enables the speed to market that we're looking for that modernization. We are building out landing zones in Azure and AWS in the GovCloud and MAG instances that is directly connected to our on-prem data center. That architecture is going to drive the three goals that I have here, which is rapid application modernization, zero trust architecture, and data-driven operations. As a cloud and data chief, I took over this job in about October, November timeframe, and I immediately said we need to establish some characteristics for this cloud platform. I want to make sure this is a banner case for our IT of the future for the Coast Guard. So those 3 characteristics I chose was speed, resilience, and value. So what I'm going to break those down a little bit. So our speed, we want to maximize our ATO reciprocity. So if you have a solution that's been deployed elsewhere, I'm very interested, especially in the DoD space. I do not want to reinvent the wheel. I do not want to accredit your system from scratch. I want to take what has worked out there before and put it in place immediately. I want to do guided onboarding, so I'm going to build out a brokerage. I have a cloud brokerage and a cloud management team. So we have the business layer and the technical layer. Our cloud brokerage is going to do white glove service. We have people lining up the door. We have about 20 stakeholders already beating on my door, getting into the cloud environment. I got to hold them back a little bit. But what we want to do is bring them in. They're a customer. We want to make sure that they get situated, give them a dev environment, get them hooked up with our virtual desktop infrastructure, log in there, start building out your application. Simultaneously, we're putting our software factory in place. That should be turned on in about 2 months in our cloud environment, and that's going to enable our pipelining so that you can get your dev to stage to prod, and you can do a continuous ATO process. It's built from that from the start. We're taking all the best practices and lessons learned from our partner services, and we're embedding them directly into that software factory process right now. So I'm alluding to there, we're going to do a lot of software development, but we're also going to do a lot of capability injection, right? If you have a ready-made solution and all I need to do is do that last mile accreditation authorization and deploy it into place, I'm very interested in that. We want to deliver capability as fast as possible to the end user. In the resilience front, we want to automate everything. Everything. I do not want human beings building anything in the cloud environment. You may have seen my talk. I did a talk for Red Hat about automation. And I said, you're not going in my cloud environment unless you're automated, right? I want to be able to, and I put this flag on the field. I said, I want to be able to delete my cloud and rebuild it and not have a tear or a sweat come down in my face. It's an unrealistic goal, but you know, that's a vision, right? That's what I want to strive for. We want to do geographic diversity. We're going to be on the East Coast and the West Coast. We actually want to do high availability and resiliency, okay? We want to reduce our dependence on the DoDIN, right? We want to be commercial internet, zero trust, right into the cloud environment. If you have Internet of Things sensors out there, we want to onboard those directly into the cloud environment, feeding data into our data lakes and our solution space there. And then value, we're going to do active cost monitoring and control. We want to have complete observability of the cloud environment, understand exactly what we're spending money on, and how we can, every year I want a report landed on my desk on how we're going to improve the cost metrics for our cloud environment. Maybe even every quarter, I'll see how the team goes. But we want to be transparent about that. We're going to have a dashboard, we're going to show everybody what we're spending in the cloud. Okay, so if your service that we deploy is becoming very expensive, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, how do you make yourself slimmer? Or I'm going to find something else that's going to help us out. And I want to focus on user experience. It's incredibly important for me, right? UX is the driver of the future here. We need to be customer obsessed, as Amazon would say, right? We need to be focused on what the outcome of the services is going to have on the end user. So what did we do? Wave one of the cloud, we did our M365 transition. We've eliminated our email infrastructure largely, except for on our cutters. We've eliminated Skype. And we're eliminating our file shares across the Coast Guard, about 1,200 servers. Those are all moving to the cloud. So that's about ready to wrap up this year. Also, our SharePoint instance is going to be eliminated. Wave 2 is what I just discussed. That's our enterprise cloud environments. That's building on services in the cloud, such as Azure Virtual Desktop, Data Lake, Software Factory, low-code, no-code platforms. And then Wave 3 is really our cloud-enabled edge. And I'm seeing that about 2 years out on the distance here. So we're separating it out into two different edges. We have a regional edge where we, as Captain talked about, we have remote sites all over the world, right? We have Alaska, we have Hawaii, we have Guam, we are out in Bahrain, and we're trying to deliver capability and functionality to those sites. And there's a band limit there, right? There's really a really hard time getting information and capability out there at the speed of need. So we want to push the cloud out to them, right? We want to deliver cloud capability directly to those users. One of the famous examples I had was one of my fellow commanders. He was complaining that he was in Hawaii, right? He had a VDIN which brought him into Alameda, but then his file shares were located in Hawaii. So he went out to Alameda, then they just hairpin right back into Hawaii to get his files, then hairpin right back out and back in again. So he had a 4-round trip just to get capability. This was about 2.5 years ago. So I want to deliver that capability in Hawaii, right? I want them to consume that capability right there as best as possible. And then lastly, we want to do Tactical Edge, which is building out those scalable platforms on board our assets, delivering a platform engineered solution so that we can build on top of that, right? So we build the infrastructure, we build the capability, people come in and use that to build applications, command and control systems, whatever it is that we want to deliver, navigation systems on top of that platform. And lastly, we want to do data sync between our assets. Very, very important. Right now, our assets are floating data syncs, and it basically syncs with the asset too. So The problem is we can't get data off of the asset right now into a repository, either when they're connected or when they're underway. So we need solutions that allow us to scale the data flow. When they're underway, I want to send just the critical data and be able to aggregate that on shore in our cloud environment and present that to our headquarters units. When they come in, we download the historical data for records retention and be able to store that somewhere and be able to run more detailed analytics on it. Also sending events and alerts that happen on board the cutter. Those are things that are currently missing today. Very much email-based or Teams-based communication now. It's not very automated in the background. So those are our desired solution spaces, and we're going to talk about how we're going to drive data into the future.
So I'm going to make a short comment before I pass the baton off to Brian. Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors, and one of his well-known books, Start With Why. I'll tell you, everything that Commander and I spoke about is kind of the how, right? And improving our networks, improving how we provide our services. Those are really important and they're critical, but they're really just the foundation. The why is really the data analytics and the apps that we're developing in the future that Brian's going to talk about. That is, to me, the transformational thing that the Coast Guard really needs to go to. It's our ability to actually make informed decisions. I mean, right now, I think we make decisions based on our heart, maybe how things were done in the past, and those are not necessarily smart or wise. They're more historic. And I'm really excited about the future. I'm really excited to be able to harness all this data that we're capturing, operational, financial, personnel, to really make better decisions on how we drive the future. And so I'm really excited at what Brian's done. He's put himself out there. He's been the first chief data officer of the Coast Guard, and he's really been bringing everyone together, getting all of our senior leaders on board with the concepts. And he's going to talk a little bit about that and kind of how we're going. But this is, to me, is the really exciting piece. And I hope when we complete here, we have some good questions of not only how we're going to get there, but where we're going.
Thanks, Pat. And so Pat has been my hype man for a long time. We're classmates back from the class of 1998 at the Academy, so I'm excited to be sitting next to him at a panel here. A year ago, there was not a office in the organization that had the word data in it. And now we have John running the cloud and data branch at the C5I Service Center, and as of September 1st, we formally stood up the Office of Data and Analytics. So, a year ago, you would not see a panel like this. A year ago, we would not have, what I would say, this type of data leadership within the organization. And so we're on a data modernization, a data transformation journey. And I want to share a little bit about where we are, because I represent what I would say the business side of data for the organization. Everything they talked about was all technology. And what consumes my day is a couple of buckets. It's not just the technology bucket, but it is the workforce development bucket. What type of trained people are we going to have to be able to actually use this technology? There's certainly a process bucket. There's a cultural bucket. And those are kind of the buckets, and there's a data governance bucket. Those are the buckets that I'm working on, throughout the day. And for the first time ever, the organization has a group of people that are resourced and put in place to look through a data lens, all day long. And we're lucky to have it. We're starting small, but we're growing the team right now. What I have represented up here is kind of the way we look at how we're going to go about modernizing or really transforming the organization, because those buckets that I described they have to start getting filled up. A cultural change within the organization to look at our data as a strategic asset, much like we look at our ships and our aircraft. We know how to take care of our ships and aircraft. We know how to overhaul them. We know how to bring them in on a depot cycle. We know how to do the O-level maintenance on the ships and aircraft, at the pier, in the hangar. But we don't know how to take care of our data. We don't have data stewards. We don't have a structure right now of data ownership. Who owns the data? Who is going to care for it? Who's going to build it as a product for the rest of the organization to gain those insights, that speed? And so that is a lot of what my team is working on. We've in the Office of Data and Analytics, we formed 3 divisions: a data analytics division, a data governance and strategy division, and a data integration division. And just by the names alone, you can get a sense on what they're focused on throughout the day. Something we've never had before. We knew that we needed a data strategy so that we can all move towards a common goal. And so we put together a data strategy. We have a cloud adoption strategy. We put together a data governance board and data governance committee so that we can bring forward the issues that are the biggest blockers, to get speed to insight for the organization. And so that is comprised of all the business unit leaders within the organization. And we recognized that along the way, we needed to have some sort of a federated, ownership and stewardship system within the organization. Any company that just plants 10 people in a central office and says, "Hey, we want to become data driven," has failed. That's a model that we know isn't going to work. So we are taking a hybrid approach on how we're going to get after becoming a more data-driven organization. We built a central office that can be the champion of data and artificial intelligence throughout the organization, but we're building a federated model of data teams that are planted within the individual business units, and it gives us a great opportunity so that those business units can get after their individual priorities. Another great reason for the data teams is the opportunity for resourcing. Each individual business unit will have the opportunity to take care of their data needs, and the data team itself, their focus will be to bring the maximum value from their business units' data. But that's not the only thing that the team is doing, is working for their individual business unit, but rather for the organization as a whole. So they'll be building data as a product and fed to a central location, or the data fabric that John talked about, and the rest of the organization is able to bring value from their particular data products. Now, we need access to that data. So a self-service analytic, or analytics for everyone, is a part of our model in this federated data ownership and stewardship model. So we need to get the right analytic to the right person at the right time. Whether that's a visualization or a dashboard for a senior leader, or a playground for a trained analyst to explore, we have to eliminate that friction from the producer to the consumer, and that's something we just really haven't focused on in the past in the organization. And then finally, all of that cannot work without some sort of a central governance. So I see the role of the Chief Data Officer, the Data Governance Board, which the principals of the Data Governance Board are my bosses, and then also the Office of Data and Analytics, performing that central function of governance. What I just talked about are 4 principles that you may have heard about on a concept called data mesh. So Zhamak Dehghani, formerly of ThoughtWorks, came up with this socio-technical paradigm called data mesh, where you have these 4 principles of building data domains, and we are able to build those aligned with our business units within the organization, ensuring that there's self-service analytics, the right analytic at the right time, building data as a product from those domains, and then some sort of a centralized computational governance structure. And that's what we're trying to set up in the organization, and where I talk about strengthening governance and developing AI-ready data. On the left-hand side, the pyramid represents the DoD's approach to data. So when Dr. Martell came in as the CDAO of DoD, he recognized that in order to get the advanced analytics and the artificial intelligence that the DoD needs, he looks at the DoD problem set as a hierarchy of needs. And the very basis of that hierarchy of needs is quality data. That is what DoD is going after by creating a data layer or a data fabric or a marketplace rather, where DoD operators can access data at a data layer. And that's a lot what our data fabric and what John is creating from the C5I Service Center. We want a data layer that will give that friction-free exchange of data to all of the business domains. And our business domains are vastly different. Intelligence and operations have a very different need than finance, human resources, and logistics. And so our fabric is going to have to accommodate all of those business needs. On the right-hand side is kind of, the way we look at approaching our data problems, which very much maps over to the DoD space. We believe that all of our senior leaders and everyone in the organization, mission managers, want that top red block. We want that right now, we want that today. But the organization has not recognized that in order to get that at scale and at speed, you need a full foundation underneath. Like a lot of non-digital native organizations, you enter really in that blue phase. Those are things you can buy: storage, security, modeling. We have a foundation there, and John is strengthening that foundation. Our office is very concerned or very interested in approaching the very bottom foundation. So that is our focus right now in data governance, but we are not just ignoring the top blocks. We are working in small slices of the organization that have quality data, that have a good foundation, and we're bringing forward artificial intelligence and advanced analytics where we can today, while we build the foundation so that we can do that across the organization at scale and speed, at a much higher speed. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on where we're going from the Chief Data Officer perspective and the Office of Data Analytics. I think we've got like about 20 minutes or so for questions. So
there's some microphones available here. If you can't get to the microphones, we'll just repeat your question for you. But
Dan Holland, you talked about data governance as that foundation. That's so key. Are there any surprising challenges or surprising wins in establishing an execution program, getting the discovery classification off the ground?
yeah, so his question for some of you was data governance being a key part of making this all happen, and what were some of the surprises or surprising wins along the way. So the Coast Guard, for the first time ever, just awarded a contract for our first data governance catalog and data governance tool set, and that started back in September, and we're beginning to train the central personnel, and then we are beginning to branch out into the business domains to start to train them. I think that this technology is going to help us move forward in governance. It's going to be a visibility layer that we've never had before. It's going to bring rule sets that we've never had before. It's going to bring exchange that we've never had before, and it's going to start to surface data stewards that we've never, even named before. We have decided on this data governance structure. We have codified that in a letter and naming our initial domains, which align very well to our assistant commandants, the business units of the organization. As some examples, I said some of them earlier: operations domain, intelligence domain, cybersecurity, finance, logistics, legal. So acquisitions. Those are some broad domains, and then the domains will need data stewards and a data ownership structure, and we're just starting to kind of build that out right now. All of this tech, will be useless without an organization that understands that there is much more than just an analyst, which is really if you look at our organization, minus maybe C5I Service Center, who really understood what engineers and cybersecurity experts were, as well as the CIO and our cyber command. But when you look at data, you look at the scientist, engineer, steward role, artificial intelligence practitioner, model builder, they don't exist. You know, ML ops, that's something that only very few people within the organization understand, and that is my charge. That we are going to move forward in this organization. We are going to become strong in those areas. So, surprises, no. We're an organization that's been around since 1790, so you know that there's some legacy traditions and business practices to break, and we're looking to break those.
I have a quick
Sir.
question, kind of a follow-on on breaking processes. I've had a lot of years in government, worked those. You're about to get crushed probably by half this group that is going to want to individually seek you guys out to show you what they've already built. Because a lot of the things that you're discussing have been built to some level in a lot of places. What's the approach for an innovative, rapid acquisition or procurement cycle associated with this strategy? Because this is a fantastic strategy. Would love to hear more about the implementation plan of it.
Yeah, so I would say that none of us are really in the acquisitions lane, but acknowledge your point. I think we have all, and maybe John and Pat might have some better comments than I, but we recognize that our traditional ways of acquiring products, building a ship, is not going to work in tech. It's very clear. It's obvious in our most recent authorization act that was that rode along with the NDAA. We did get some more OTA authority for I think technology into production. So there is activity occurring right now to break down some of those barriers, and maybe John could talk a little bit more on the tech side, but our acquisitions directorate certainly would be better to field that question.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. Acquisitions is one of the most challenging aspects of doing a lot of this. One of the big changes that we've made in the last few months is historically the way that we provided IT services was, we had a dozen plus contracts that we leveraged. We had somebody to provide security services, someone to work on networks, someone to work on operations, someone to buy the computers, someone to load the operating system on the computer, someone to handle the servers, the data farm. It was, and anytime you wanted to run a project, if you gave it to a mid-level manager, that person had to go and reach out to all those different vendors and mod all those different contracts. It was incredibly painful. There was no way to get from here to there. And I think that held back our modernization efforts. Recently in December, we awarded an integrated managed services contract to a single vendor, and over the next 8 or 12 months, we're going to basically wrap up all of those individual contracts under one umbrella and one vehicle. The biggest things, as I mentioned, that'll improve our ability to execute as any new project, because as we know, all new IT everything is an integrated solution. So that'll make it simpler for us to modernize. But it also frees up our acquisition directorate, who used to manage 20 different contracts plus. So that's our first approach that we're pursuing right now, is kind of freeing up our acquisition resources, getting all of our what I call commodity IT under one umbrella, simplify our processes, so we can refocus that team and that time that handles all those contracts into kind of developing a contract strategy of how we're going to acquire these new analytic platforms and move in that direction.
I'd also like to add, my main focus is raising the entry bar, right? And not the difficulty, but the amount of tech that you can leverage that's already there, right? I don't want a solution that brings its full stack to the table, right? Those days are over, right? You need to work well with others. You need to have open data standards. You need to integrate. You need to share. And that solution will ride on top of everything we're trying to build here and be a part of that ecosystem, right? I like the term platform engineering. I know it's kind of getting a bad rap, but I see that as the bar, right? That's the bar I want to build. That's where I kind of disengage from being an infrastructure guy. And then I let our apps teams take over. I let our capabilities teams take over. I let our data teams take over from there, and they take it the rest of the way.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Catherine from Tritus. I was wondering, how do you balance what you guys are doing? And I see the data security on the other end because we encrypt data at all classifications. And I was wondering, how do you find a balance between what you're doing and securing the data without throttling or hindering the access to the data by the user and the user experience? And what are your asks or needs with that effort?
Yeah, so the, sorry, I was trying to decode. I got it now. So the software factory is really the entry point to that security discussion, right? And, when you either organically develop software, you're bringing in ready-made solutions like a container that's on Iron Bank, for example. You got to pass a series of checks in order to get deployed, and a lot of those checks are building in the baseline for what we would call acceptable to field or certified to field, right? And what we want to do from both the data realm and the application realm is make that a pipeline that everybody can walk through and understand very transparently what's required of them. I think the traditional ATO process, you kind of come to the table with 600 pages of paperwork and you say, here's what I did, and nobody really understands like what's going on at the end of the day, right? It's just words on paper. What the software factory and what our principals are going to do is make that a very obvious process where you're getting your green check marks in the boxes, and whatever fails is clearly stipulated out in the report. That would apply for both applications and for data usage. So when you look at the data catalog, I don't want to speak for you, Captain, but you look at the data catalog and data governance solutions, in order to maintain integrity and confidentiality of that data, we want to put in place policy decision points and attribute-based access control and be able to, my goal would be to free the data based on who you are and where you are currently. So if you're an aviator who works at Air Station San Diego, I should be able to view the training data for my fellow aviators without having to go through hoops and ladders to request that, because you already know I'm stationed in San Diego, you know I'm an aviator, and you have a CAT card, so I have access, right? It should just come as a part of being in the Coast Guard and being registered in these systems. And so being able to bring all this information together as part of building that security fabric is a key goal of this, to be able to just open the doors given baseline criteria that already exists. Did I answer the question? I kind of went a couple different ways.
It did. My only thoughts are the most vulnerable part of security is the user. So in what we believe, or what I believe, is encrypting the data no matter where it is probably the biggest key to help support, because you never know what's happening with the user. But I appreciate and I agree that having criteria about where you are is also key. So thank you.
Yeah, the last point that you made, Sherry Thomas, more for cyber, CTO. You guys are going to be, or the entire service are going to be very reliant on identity management, so that we can get the right information to, what you just talked about, the user has to be trusted by the system and the application, right? From a zero trust principles perspective. And then federation of all those identities across the board, so there is no duplication of all that information in multiple avenues. So I'm just trying to figure out, from an enterprise data and an AI perspective, how you get that trust into the system, and how are you building in terms of data governance and data, awareness, if you will, to ensure that identity transposes across the board. For example, from the Coast Guard to the Navy Identity Services system, and a Marine Corps user and the Navy user and a Coast Guard user, at least we all can talk to each other. Then beyond that, it's going to be from a JADC2 perspective between the service partners, and then how to, I guess, containerize or reduce duplication of that data, of those identities, from a coalition or a partner nation perspective too. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there's a view right now, and I think we're evolving past that of like centralizing identity management across the entire services. And I don't think that view necessarily works because it forces everybody to be doing the same thing at all times. I'm very much a fan of federating that space and putting the power back into our level where we can define what the identity space works for us best, right? So we have cutters, we have aircraft, we have shore sites, we have cloud services. We need a solution that works across all those that may not necessarily work for the Army, may not necessarily work for the Navy, and I think we need to make those decisions. So I actually talked about this a couple months ago. The challenge is going to be like what you just said. When you translate across services, how do you ensure in an automatic data sharing environment, how do you make sure you maintain that integrity of attributes that I may call somebody a machinist mate on a Coast Guard cutter or whatever, and then somebody else classifies them as a logistician, right? Those two people should probably be able to see the same data, but I'm calling them different things, right? And so I think what's really, this is my opinion, I think what's going to happen is we're going to form these mappings between organizations that bridges the what I would say is my identity space, my attribute space, and what your identity and attribute space is. And then we would curate those mappings in order to federate this information across boundaries. There's another layer to this as well. Some of our data is law enforcement information, and it's public information that isn't necessarily shareable with the DoD. So we do have a little bit of an extra protective layer that we need to add to this in order to prevent inappropriate sharing of information. I would say that that's the next layer of problems we need to address, right? Right now we need to focus on building our space and making that even possible. and then we'll work on actually sharing that information, federating it, and working with our partners.
Hey, I'm Marty Pendleton from AWS. I think this presentation was very valuable. Thank you. I think on behalf of all of us, we all took away something. I'm a former ship guy from here in San Diego, so you're giving me a little PTSD with the web pages loading in 5 minutes and all the connectivity, so appreciate that. I am interested in the point that you made about getting data from the ship or from the shore to a central location, and curious what you've learned from the other DoD components, whether from aircraft or from ships. Have you learned anything that other DoD components are doing that you can take anything away from? Where do you view the Coast Guard on that journey compared to the other components in DoD?
So, the interesting thing, or the part I love about working with the DoD, is that they have huge economies of scale relative to us. Almost all of our movement in that our 5G connectivity to ships from shore, our wireless shore tie, as we refer to it, that is a Navy solution that we're looking at implementing, that we're partnering with NIWC to implement. The Space Force and the Navy are basically taking the lead on LEO and providing those contract vehicles and doing all the requirements development at a very technical level, and all that working with industry. So basically having those partnerships for us has basically allowed us to kind of leapfrog a little bit faster and further, and would not be possible without them. The meetings that they've set up have been amazing. AWS has been participating in those, some of them in classified environments, some on class, and really getting a better understanding of the risks and the threat space, and what opportunities are available with industry. Particularly with LEO satellites, it was incredibly exciting to have all the different vendors come into a room and brief us on what they were doing. It's amazing to see the increase month by month, week by week that they're making in providing LEO connectivity, which is going to be instrumental in the future of basically maritime operations and the Coast Guard in general, and our ability to get data, analyze data, get our sensor data back, be able to have that decision at the edge advantage that we're looking for. And I'm really thankful for everyone in industry that's been working so hard, and it's amazing to see hundreds of satellites being put up basically per week in that area, and that's where we're going and why. Hope that answered your question, but feel free.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does this one work? Hi, my name's Dustin. I'm a co-owner of a small business in New Mexico. But I was wondering, who would I speak to get in touch with like the actual technicians and what you would call the Coast Guard people on the boat to do the inspections? Like, who would I talk to, and what equipment are they using, to see if we could help, their process?
Probably me.
Yep. Perfect. I'm sitting right.
And we're all going to be manning the Coast Guard booth after this until noon, so you can stop by.
All right. Anyone else? I apologize. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see if you're raising a hand or not. I'm looking for no. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us today. I really appreciate it. This is we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. I sometimes wonder if COVID was a blessing in disguise. For one thing, it was great because some of our workforce, particularly our military guys, they're working from home for a good percentage of that, and it seemed like the work days never ended. The phone calls regularly happened at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, sometimes even later. And we made some amazing progress and strides, and I really think we set up a foundation for what the next year and a half, 2 years are going to provide. And I can't tell you how excited I am. The partnership I felt with industry recently has been amazing. I definitely think it's improved from the previous few years. Sometimes I felt like it was a little bit combative, or that our acquisition guys they didn't want to hear about it. They didn't want to go meet with them, and now it's really changed. And I've seen industry really dig in and start to provide, huge modernization in services and tools that help people to collaborate, help us to communicate, and help us to basically manage our data and make better decisions and advantages that we haven't had before. So we're going to be there for a few hours. We're definitely looking forward to talking with you. That's why we're here. This is kind of a lead-in, but please try to find us and reach out to us further.
Hey, and yeah, thanks a lot for letting us share our journey with you. And if you want to follow further along, you can look me up on LinkedIn. Also, my office, the Office of Data and Analytics, will have a LinkedIn page as well. And we're going to continue to share our journey and our milestones along the way. One last plug. We're looking for tech-savvy experts to work for us. We're hiring within our office. I believe that there's hiring going on with John's team, and so send your folks and resumes our way. And in addition, there are many opportunities within the U.S. Coast Guard to serve. So if you know young Americans who want an amazing lifestyle of adventure combined with new technology, send them our way. Thank you.
All right. Well, Brian, Pat, and John, echo what you just said. Thank you for joining us at West 2023 and being a part of this, and the invigorating discussion about speed, resilience, and value. The only thing I wish is that I could get those frequent flyer miles for that trip from Alameda to Hawaii and back to Alameda to Hawaii. I mean, that's a number of round trip type miles to do that. But innovation is the way of the future, and you've heard it from them that they're seeking your input from industry. So I think you're going to have a few people come by and see you. So another round of applause, and thanks to the Coast Guard.